So I've been, waiting for, 3-4 months. We've been chatting about getting together to do something, to have a bit of a chat. Aaron Burns, ex-Manchester United football player, becoming a good friend as well.
Yeah.
And, we've both been on a bit of a journey and discussing our journeys over the last, I suppose, about 6 to 8 months. We'll talk about how we met as well, which is completely random and with the amount of connections that we got. But absolutely love what Aaron's doing. He runs an absolutely incredible insurance business. On top of that, you've got the association for the retired Manchester United football players as well.
Yeah.
You're pretty much doing quite a lot at the moment.
Yeah, busy. Obviously, the life insurance is the main thing.
Yeah.
We've got an established business now. There's nearly 78 advisors. Interestingly, there's 22/23 ex or current footballers that are transitioning out,
which I know a few of them as well.
Out of sport into financial services, which I think is something that they need and is a good platform for them. I'm lucky enough to be part of the Association of Former Manchester United Players, which in the last 12 to 18 months need a little bit of redirection because of what's gone on with the finances and things of that nature. And my name got put in the hat, and lucky enough it popped out, and now I'm able to try and bring the former players back to generate income or money to help the guys with dementia and frail care issues. So last week we had an event at Old Trafford.
I see that. It looked really good.
Was lucky enough to have Brian Robson and Steve Bruce as the main people coming to the event, and it was fantastic. The room was 400 people, a lot of Man United spirit in there, and hopefully we can continue that.
Yeah, nice. Well, touching on the actual like insurance part, you're talking about life insurance as well, but you do a number of different types of protection, right, for these guys, which they need either at the beginning of their career as well as post-career, right? Yeah,
I think in society in general, financial literacy is probably not where it needs to be, especially in sport. Some of these young boys are getting money really, really early and not knowing where to position it. So, we have a conversation with anyone, but sometimes specifically footballers, in relation to what is life insurance, why do you need it, what's critical illness, what is injury cover.
That's very important, I think, as well, injury cover.
So important, because at the end of the day, as a footballer, you are the asset until you're not.
Yeah, of course.
Which I know you deal with a lot as well. So for your audience or for my audience, talk to me about income after sport.
Well, it's very similar, right? We both have the same goals, protecting players. Obviously, income after sport was created to build tax-efficient property portfolios to ensure that players, athletes, not just footballers, you've got boxers, UFC fighters, MMA fighters, and so on, golfers, to ensure that they're getting an income when they retire. We've both seen it. There's a lot of players that have been on substantial amounts of money, played in World Cups, Champions League finals. They don't really have too much to show for it. And I don't necessarily always believe that's because they've wasted their money, but they've also had bad advice from that.
Yeah.
And my goal, just from my own personal background and so on, and my main focus is just to ensure that these guys are being looked after post-career. So it ranges really from me working with super young players. I've got a lot of guys on the books that are 18 that have just got their first contracts.
Amazing.
All the way through to retired players. We work with some of the biggest athletes in the world, all the way down to, as I just said, some of the younger guys that are looking to start their journey and making sure they're getting the right advice and right protection, essentially.
Yeah, and obviously I know that you do a great job. There's some fantastic shirts on the wall.
There's a few, there's a few more to go up.
Heavily linked to Chelsea, but you mentioned there sort of like bad advice. What is good advice in your arena?
Well, good advice for me is about knowing the person that you're dealing with, okay? Because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
So the most important thing for me is to really dig down deep and find out about the individual, because everyone has different goals. They have different types of earnings as well. And it's about tailoring the right opportunities in investment. And I don't sell property, right? I package investments, but I become a partner with that individual, because a majority of the time, if the player is 18, 19, I'm working with the parents, right? When they get to that next level and they start working with financial advisors, I work very closely with them as well as their accountants. And it's about building good relationships with these people to make sure that everyone's on the same page, protecting them.
Yeah.
It gets very difficult when you're working against these people. Obviously, there's some incredible financial advisors out there. There's also some dogs, if we're honest. Come across quite a few in my time that are just interested in their own fees as opposed to the actual player. But I like to sit down with the individual, and I'll give you a prime example. I've got quite a lot of young players, and we will cash flow and look to build something for them over 15 years. It's not about just buying this particular property right now because it's going to make you a lot of money, etc. It's more about the planning ahead.
Yeah.
And my job is essentially to make sure that they don't have to worry about investing outside of football. I've got some clients, and I'm sure you've experienced it, where they get to 27, 28 and they've not actually made any form of investments. Yeah. And it's not just property. You should be investing across many different industries or sectors or investment vehicles. But yeah, the whole goal basically is just to ensure that by the time they get to later on in their career, they can focus on football, because at the beginning, obviously the contracts increase, right? And that's all I want the guys to focus on, is getting the next big contract. Yeah. It's a short career. People don't realise that, and even some of the football fans that are screaming, "You're on 200 grand a week, why can't you kick that ball in that net and stuff?" And they don't understand that these guys are human and it's their job. And they only get a very short period of time of earning that kind of money, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no.
It's the same. Well, we've got the same end goal, right?
Yeah, and like you say, I think you touched on a great point there, which is like, if they're lucky, they're going to get to 35. Only 1% of people make it. I think there's 4 or 5 million people trying to be footballers in the UK at this moment in time. 1% make it. And then the 1% of the 1% have a full career. So I think financial literacy and the correct advice is paramount. But it's also important to get in front of those parents and those decision makers if the young athletes are coming through, because ultimately it doesn't matter whether it's you or myself or an agent or anyone else in the industry that's speaking to them. They're probably going to lean on mum and dad to have a. And if they're not literate or they don't understand the landscape, then that decision making comes a bit more difficult.
Well, at the end of the day, if you do a good enough job, and you know what this market's like in this industry, it's all about word of mouth business, and that's generally how income after sport has grown. Something I want to touch on, mate. How did you find the transition from obviously playing at United, then moving on to doing what you're doing now? Was it tough at the time, or?
The transition was super difficult, and it's probably not talked about enough, because you build an identity around yourself, and people do as well as a football player. The routine, the fitness, you can't really replace that. And even if you are the most disciplined person in the world, it's difficult if you're not chasing someone or competing with someone to just keep the fitness level up, never mind the mindset and the mentality and all of those things. So I think it's something that's not talked about enough. It doesn't matter whether you fall out the system at 18 or you're John Terry and finish at 38, that transition into civilization and into the real world is going to be difficult, because you are a competitor and you have been since 5 or 6. So I think the game needs to do a little bit more in helping people transition or come out of the game successfully, because all those skills are there, but the guys that come out or the girls that come out of the game, they don't know how to utilize them to the best effects. And also, whilst in the game, you do really well with sort of like building them a property portfolio, but we also need to build them as individuals in terms of what are your passions and skills away from the game, so that when you come out, you know what type of arena to put your chips in, basically.
Well, one big benefit for a lot of athletes, football players that do have a long career is their network as well, which is essentially what you've done, right? And what, as you just mentioned, there's a number of players that are transitioning right now away from playing into insurance and so on, which is amazing what you're doing, right? Trying to help them, to be fair.
Right.
But, regarding the property side of things, and for me, I think the main focus, and again, I don't sell property as we discussed before, I package deals, right? I get ridiculous discounts of things, and make sure that the deal is right from the get-go. And it's just different. Some people need an income now, some people are building up to that income a bit later in life. But for me, it's also being able to create a business for them with a property portfolio, where some of my clients will come out and focus on managing that as a business for them as well, right? Nice. Because it's about education, which is really big for me. Making sure that these guys understand everything they're doing.
Yeah.
It's about obviously taking any kind of risk out for them as well. That's super important. I don't like taking a risk. And furthermore to that, it's just the relationships that you build, which enables them really to, come out and just maintain that kind of lifestyle that they've got. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be earning someone 200 grand a month, right? It's weird though, a few of them have requested that, but it's very difficult to do so. But it's just making sure that when they're getting to that point of retirement, that they just feel comfortable, If you knew you got 5, 10, 15, 20, like I said, no shoe fits all, £20,000 a month coming in, and you've got equity that's growing within a limited company there for you over a period of time, you're kind of setting up generational wealth as well.
It's important. Me thinking from sort of like putting my football boots back on, talk to me about how you got into this industry and why you've identified athletes as the people to educate, because you said education's important to you, but how did you start? If I was a young footballer now studying success, I'd want to look at your business and why I'd want to partner with you, but I really need to understand what made you start.
A bit of a story about Ronnie. Where do I start? So it's been a bit of a bumpy ride, to be honest. So when I was young, obviously, I've mentioned this to you before, I lived in a hostel when I was at senior school. That was about 3 years when my dad unfortunately had an accident. So went through a little bit of hardship there, and I just become a bit of a grafter. I was working on an ice cream van after school, making sure I was buying the Patrick Coxes at that time that everyone was wearing to keep up with the Joneses and so on. But I built like a real good work ethic, and the second I left school, which was straight after GCSEs, I didn't take most of them to be honest, but I got put on a farm.
Right.
And on that particular farm...
Is this in London?
No, this was actually in Hertfordshire.
Okay.
So I was a bit of a tearaway, and so my dad put me on a farm, and I was getting up at 4 a.m. every day, mucking out 12 horses, feeding the dogs, the chickens, getting back into the house at 7, being fed breakfast, and then my work day would start. Wow. I was getting paid £30 a day to go and work on the farm thereafter, and I hated it, if I'm honest, at the beginning. But I thank my dad constantly right now for doing that for me, because it built and installed a work ethic that I don't think you can get. And it's the same thing with athletes, so to speak. That's what they do get, that work ethic, like you just said, that training, etc. all the time. Anyway, moving on from that, look, I've been doing investments for about 20 years now, working in investments, and about 5 years ago, I started to deal with a couple of athletes as clients, and I just got a huge passion for it. And when I was actually conversing with them initially and going through their story, it kind of resonated with me a little bit, because a majority of athletes, certainly football players, don't come from privileged backgrounds, right? And they literally have to work their asses off. And I kind of feel a passion with them as well, and I feel very connected with my clients. And I'll give you an example. It was only the other day that a client of mine, we were driving, and we drove past a bus stop, and he said to me, I remember standing there with my brother and my mum in the pouring rain every single day to train on that pitch. And sometimes we'd miss the bus and have to wait for another 2 hours. And that also kind of, how can I say it? I feel that as well, because seeing what those parents have gone through for their kids also. And that's pretty much how Income After Sport was formed, right? I kind of realised, just being within property and chatting with a lot of athletes, of how much bad advice that they've got, they've been given in the past. And that's generally working with people that only have one goal with athletes, particularly football players, where they believe that they earn a lot of money, so they can charge extra to do something. They take advantage of these guys. Where I go the complete opposite way. So I don't charge them a fee. I've told you that before, because I get paid from the property company to have access to my client base. But a majority of that fee I'd also put into the deal for them to make sure that it's as profitable as possible. But more so to make sure that from the get-go, we're making some good returns. But yeah, to answer your question, mate, the whole thing come around, really, it kind of almost fell on my lap a little bit.
Nice.
And I had a vision that I put down on paper, and I've stuck to it to this day.
Love that.
And I've ticked every box as we've gone along, and we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
But my whole goal is to kind of change the whole industry, you know, to be the main company that athletes are working with, to, you know, the go-to individuals that if anyone needs looking after or looking to purchase property and build that portfolio, we're the guys to do that. And I feel like we've really established ourselves now to be that number one.
I like that.
You were talking about how do you get started with someone?
Yes. So from an athlete's perspective, if I was sat in their shoes, I'd want to know sort of like, how do you get started?
Well, first and foremost is a consultation.
Okay.
And generally, if they're a young athlete, it will be with their parents and so on, or their financial advisor if, you know, they're going throughout their career and they haven't actually got one yet. And it's like I said, it's finding out about them and really understanding exactly what their goals are. Prime example with many of my clients, they will say, right, by the time I retire in 7 years, I want £10,000 a month income, right? Well, I've got other clients that want £1 million a year income.
Yeah.
And that's actually happening right now. In fact, I've got 3 of them that have set that target, one of which I've hit £250,000 already within the space of 6 months. It's not easy because there are property deals everywhere. You know, you can jump online and, you know, go onto Rightmove, or there's property developers and companies throwing things around left, right and centre. So it's about finding the right investment for that individual.
Yeah.
So it's not one size fits all. You know, I can't just randomly chuck properties at you. So I'd find out a lot about you as an individual, what your goals are, and then I'll go away and package an initial investment that I think is right for you.
Yeah.
I'll sit down, go through that in detail, which is about the location, why it's going to increase in value, why it will rent. You know, I do the mortgages for all of my clients. I do everything. The rentals, it's completely hands off. I call it an armchair investment.
Yeah.
But initially, just need to find out about as much information about you, Aaron. And once I've got that information, I'll then be able to structure something right.
For me, I know this would probably have happened, so I'll just paint a scenario. Do some of your clients look at the investments as things that they would want to buy and live in, and how do you get around?
Yeah, they do.
How do you get around
do.
telling them that that's maybe not what's best to invest in?
Yeah, well, you get emotional purchasers, or you get purchasers that are based on numbers. So from the get-go, it's all about numbers.
Okay.
Another thing that a lot of athletes will make a mistake of is purchasing a property and furnishing it themselves, going to spend 15, 20K on a 1-bedroom apartment in Manchester. It makes no business sense. So I try to take full control over that.
Okay.
And don't allow certain things to happen. And again, prime example, recently, I got 20 properties in the building. Again, I won't sell anything. I will handpick and select the right properties that I would personally buy.
Yeah.
And those numbers need to work. And I always start from the rental numbers and build back,
Okay.
as opposed to concentrating on the purchase price. Because if those rental numbers do not add up, won't touch it. And as much as I like the property. But going back to that example, it's quite funny. Wanted a penthouse. I'm like, it could be empty for 3 or 4 months, because a lot of them don't buy cash, right? They're all leveraged with a mortgage. And they might end up with a £6,000 liability on a monthly basis. I'm not going to be held responsible for that. So, you know, should they want to go and buy something emotionally, I'm probably not the right guy to do that with. I stay away from, you know, selling actual homes to them, but I do advise them. So I've got a couple of my players might call me and say, look, I want to buy this property, will you negotiate it for me?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty good at that. Which I go and do, but I do it for nothing, you know, it's just part of doing it for a mate, aren't you? Like if you said to me, mate, can you go and negotiate this for me? I want to buy it, I'll go and do it. You might be a better negotiator, who knows?
We'll see.
Yeah, but the like I said, the main focus, it's all about the individual. You know, and sometimes I might not have something that's right. So if it's not right, we can look at something again in a few months.
In terms of sort of like financial literacy from a footballer's perspective, I can also see a scenario where someone's had a decent career.
Yeah.
They've bought a house that was suitable for when they were at the height of their powers in terms of their earning potential. Now they're retired and they're looking to maybe rent that house out, for example, but they've put themselves in a box where it could only be maybe a Premier League or a Championship player.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. So how
We've got a
navigate
mutual
that?
friend, I think we won't obviously mention anything that's happened to recently as well, but it's hard to advise that. There's one thing I would always say, it's a short career, okay? So you're forever home, pay that off.
Yeah.
Okay, and the idea would be to have buy-to-let investments that's then feeding you an income for you to live off of.
Yeah.
What you don't want to get to the point is that you're sat there with a huge mortgage on a house, which is 10 grand a month, and then you're relying on that to pay that.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you any income to be able to live. I would only focus on buying a house to live in is when I'm settled and I know I'm staying at that club.
Yeah.
Too many players have purchased earlier in their career, moved around different clubs, that property sat there empty. Because you can always rent it out to another player in the club, but maybe they don't want to rent that out.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And I've found with the younger generations now, they prefer apartments as opposed to houses.
Yeah.
That's happening quite a lot.
And from like a buying and selling perspective, is it easier or harder to sell apartments or houses?
It varies. I deal with both, right? So it's all about making sure that the investment you make from the get-go is in an area with huge demand, which has a constant influx of either students or people wanting to move to that particular area.
Yeah.
You know, when you have the press that comes out and says, oh, you know, the UK market's about to drop slightly, that doesn't happen everywhere. It'll be in areas where there's no demand for someone to move to.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got 10 houses somewhere or you know, a block of 20 houses and there's, you know, no growth in that area or no actual real reason why someone wants to move to that new area, you're going to be relying on someone within that area moving. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
And if interest rates are high, it's difficult for your general public to look to purchase. So it's all about just finding the right area, Aaron, you know, from the get-go. It's the most important thing. And you know, you can't guarantee that things can sell really quickly.
Yeah.
It does depend on the market. However, if it's an exceptional deal from the get-go, the client's made a lot of money out of that. It does also enable them to make, you know, to be able to actually sell it for a little bit less than the market value or whatever they need to do, you know, to make sure it's gone pretty quickly. But the idea is not to sell.
Yeah.
You ask any property investor, what's the worst thing they've done? In fact, you can ask me that, and I'll say selling that property.
Yeah. In terms of, last question from me, in terms of if you had to build a blueprint for a young player, what is gold standard? If he's going to play from 18 to 35, and he's going to have some income after sport, what's the gold standard?
Again, mate, it kind of depends on their earnings and what their expenditure is.
Okay.
So if you're used to spending £50,000 a month to live off of, we've kind of got to make sure we're, you know, contributing a proportion of that. But I would definitely say if you could buy as a young professional in a lower division, 1 property a year to build yourself up to 10. People have this perception that you need to put in £200,000-300,000 to buy a property. You don't. You can put in 50, 60k and that will give you 10-15% back in 5 or 10 years on a yearly basis. So, but if you can have a nice little property portfolio of 10 apartments, 10 houses, I think you'll be okay, because it's more about the tax efficiency and buying it through a limited company. And, you know, gradually as your children get to a certain age, you can have them on as directors, which makes it tax efficient. You know, you're not paying any form of inheritance there and you're building family wealth. Can you imagine if you bought a property at 18, you retired at 35, and then another 10 years later, what your income will be on that? If you hold onto a property for 20 years with the compounded increase of the rental, you know, time you get 20 years, you're probably making anywhere between 15 and 20% net back on what your investment was then.
Yeah, just because of inflation.
It's massive money, mate. It's huge.
I like it.
It's huge. So for me, be consistent in adding a property or 2 on a yearly basis and hold on to them. And even when some of, not my personal clients or some people that I know that have bought property from other sources, and they're saying to me, this isn't quite working right now. Just hold on to it, it will. You know? But that's the most important thing for me, is making sure the deal's right from the get-go to ensure that return on investment is happening straight away. Immediately. So going back and touching on to the young players and helping them start out. So let's just say that there was a young 18, 19-year-old that's got their first contract for a Premier League player. You know, it's going to be probably close to £1 million a year. So the first bit of advice I give them is don't move out your house, stay with your parents, which is hard sometimes if they're from London and, you know, they're playing for Liverpool, United, Newcastle, wherever it may be. I had this scenario recently actually, because it's very easy to get large sums of money, which I call it new money, right? When I became a stockbroker, for an example, when I was younger, I was earning a lot of money. I didn't have any money by week 3 of the month. I was eating McDonald's and things like that. So I've kind of been through the same scenario. But I had that same style of Gucci t-shirt in every colour. Okay, so it's more ego. It's important for them to stay grounded. And in that particular scenario, I would advise them to take a percentage of that contract, depending on what they've got or what they're earning, and then start investing immediately.
Okay.
And start to build that portfolio. Because again, if you can get to 25, 26 years old and you've got 20 properties in that portfolio, by the time you are 33 to 36 and you're retiring, that's giving generational wealth, which is super important. And the goal is for anyone, doesn't matter if you're an athlete, it could be anyone out there, is to make the right investments, which will then sustain your life and give you an income from those investments for you to live on forever. That's what wealth is.
Yeah.
Wealth isn't using the money that you earn and spending it. You know, it's using the profit from the investments that you've made.
So spend. Yeah.
And in some cases, you know, these individuals, these athletes can get up to the age of 35, and some of them have 40, 50 properties in their portfolio, which is incredible, right? It's everybody's dream. The amount of hassle I'm going to go through to get them up to that level is ridiculous, because they don't see anything that goes on in the background.
Yeah.
You know, which is the most stressful part. They see that they're investing money, they're getting a return in their bank. They don't even know that they've had an issue with a tenant, or there's been a bit of damp, or something needs to be replaced. Now, sometimes I'll just go and do it myself.
Yeah.
But that's why I do what I do, and that's why I love it as well. It's about protecting these guys, and that just enables me to have a sustainable business and constantly get recommended to others. You know, the way the business has grown over the last 6 months, month on month, has been mind-blowing.
Yeah.
To the point it's kind of pinch me situations, you know, all the way to being, you know, sitting with the Real Madrid squad a few weeks ago. And I think that's kind of the point for me with Income After Sport, where I really felt like, okay, this is really working now. You know, it's you know, I'm really realising my dream. Yeah. Because it weren't just based on helping players in the UK, or as you always touch on with the amount of Chelsea shirts I've got in here, you know, being biased for the Chelsea squad.
There's definitely a bias.
Weirdly enough, I probably have about 30% of my clients are playing in and around Europe, MLS.
Wow.
It varies. It completely varies. But I can't call this a job. You know, I love it. I live it. I breathe it.
Yeah.
You know, and going back to actually when you asked me earlier in our conversation, kind of how it all came around. Again, it's kind of realising my dream, you know. Back to those days in the hostel, eating cold tins of baked beans for breakfast. You know, just sitting with some of my heroes, having dinner, and more importantly, you know, making them a return on their investment, which other people haven't successfully done in their career.
Yeah, that's amazing. Should be proud.
Thanks, mate.
No problem.
I'm not proud yet. There's a long way to go, right? And hopefully we'll be part of this journey together as well, mate.
Hopefully, yeah.
Should we touch on how we met?
Yeah.
I helped you get into a boxing event, didn't I?
Yeah, I had the ticket, by the way. I had the ticket.
No, Aaron and I, we basically went to a boxing event where we both had mutual person we knew fighting, but also others. And then they wouldn't let us in. They just wouldn't let us in. They wouldn't know, you know, there were VIP tickets, ringside. Yes. Yeah. We managed to get our way in, and then we couldn't bloody find our seats.
No. The where we needed to be, the guy was like, "Oh, you've got this wristband. You need to be upstairs in the co-op." And I was like, "But where?" Like, and him being a typical Cockney, started getting a bit loud and demanding to be like ushered to this thingy. So it's me, him, and his mate, just like getting ushered through Co-op Live to this VIP lounge that you have to sit in before you can go to the fight. And then we just got talking at the bar, and it turns out that he does this.
Yeah, it turns out that you do that. So it's kind of like, that's how the relationship starts, which is amazing. Yeah. Mate, we're talking about investments and everything else, and football, and which we love doing, right? We could talk for hours for it. But let's talk about your new little venture of the consistency blueprint that I see you posting on a daily basis on your socials, going into the gym. which does give me a bit of motivation. So it's working.
That's what it's designed for. But ultimately, the consistency blueprint is a 90-day journal to allow you to be successful. We talked about compound interest there in terms of the value of your property going up over a period of time. You can build compound interest in your own life. So the consistency blueprint is about building a winning habit each quarter in order to be a more successful person at the end of the year. It's aligned with your vision and your long-term plan, which you alluded to before. So we're going to build your vision for the next 5 or 10 years. We're going to reverse engineer it to what you can control today. You're going to show up on a consistent basis, but in alignment with your long-term plan. And that's what the consistency blueprint is. And it's about trying to educate as many people as possible that, everyone thinks they need to be a star or have some sort of like magical skill to be a success, because that's what potentially social media says. But I know that showing up early, being consistent and having a plan and a vision will allow you to outwork and out exercise everyone in your industry.
Well, there's a saying that I stick to.
Go on.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Exactly.
So, and it is about consistency, right?
Yeah.
It's all about that. And I find with a lot of, just talking about general public now, and I can be a stickler for this as well. Oh, I'll start this on Monday, or right on Monday, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to do a 5-mile run, I'm going to go to the gym in the afternoon. And you're kind of fading already, right? And it's just, as you said, just being consistent constantly. And that's in every aspect of life, whether it's training, whether it's your family, whether it's business, that consistency always prevails.
Yeah, 100%.
Always.
And I think people believe that it can only be in one facet of your life. It's for everything. And the commitment is the main thing. Having a contract with yourself that you're going to honour, and understanding what the best version of you would do. Because if you have 3 or 4, 7 or 8 out of 10 years, you're going to be more successful than someone who's very sporadic and doesn't stick to the plan. So the consistency blueprint is about aligning yourself with your long-term goal, understanding it's going to take a while, but through consistency, hard work and showing up on time, you're going to get there.
Essentially making a business plan for yourself and holding yourself accountable.
I think that's the main thing for me. I talk to people all the time and people ask me like, how do I start? And I always think that people should be writing a mission statement like you would if you was a business. This is what my mission statement is. This is what I'm saying I'm going to live up to as though I'm a business or a personal brand, and I'm going to walk in alignment with the mission statement, because that's what businesses do. Yeah,
mate, I completely agree with you. And a lot of people say that as well out there, it's all over Instagram and so on, but act like the person you want to be.
Exactly.
So once you write that mission statement, act like that now, and everything will fall into place, right?
100%. And I think that what we're struggling with as a society at the moment is we're not studying success, and if we are, it's just on Instagram and TikTok. We're not actually getting into the depths and the darkness of what success looks like, because it is lonely. It does single you out. You are going to have to detach from some of those friends that are fun but not going in the same direction as yourself. And that's what success demands. And we talk about all the frills and the perks, the nice houses, the nice cars, the goal at Wembley. But there's a lot of sacrifice going in. And the difference between, I always talk about it, but Nani and Ronaldo isn't talent and ability, it's discipline.
Yeah. No, I completely agree on that, mate. 100%. Love it, to be honest.
Thank you, mate.
And let's jump into the books.
Yes, love them.
You love them, don't you?
Yeah.
So I struggle to read.
Because you're ADHD.
No, it's more so, I think I'm always thinking constantly, right?
Okay.
There's always something going around in my head, whether that's to do with work, family life and so on. Because I'm always striving to go that next step or to be better and help people as well. But I love listening to them. And what's your favourite recommendation at the minute, mate?
They're always the same. I think if you could read Atomic Habits,
Done that.
The Compound Effect, High Performance Habits by Brendan Bouchard is superb. How to Win Friends and Influence People is absolutely an amazing book. But you mentioned there something about reading. I think that we all should be reading role models. And if you struggle to read a book in its plainest form, audiobooks are fantastic. But there's 2 things that you need to do. You need to be listening and potentially being active, whether that's going for a run or in the car. You need to be making notes in your book in your phone, sorry, and then you need to be doing a book review on paper because it's
That's great advice.
It's the hand, mind, and a mouth scenario. So you're listening, you're taking the notes, and then you're doing the review, and therefore you've consumed it 3 times, which means it will ultimately stick.
Did you that really resonates with what we're doing here, because you find when I'm speaking to a lot of the younger players as well, they're always asking, how can I educate myself? How can I learn? And I think by reading or listening to these kind of books will really help them, because it will create, again, that consistency like Atomic Habits, right?
Yeah.
What a book.
Great book.
I've listened to that about 5 or 6 times, and I've had to remember it all, to be honest, because again, I'm always doing something. But I think it's an exceptional book, and that's one book that I would recommend for anyone to read, to the point I bought it for my son for his 18th birthday.
Amazing. It's one of the best gifts. Every time it's Christmas or someone's birthday, I'll buy them a book because I think it's the best gift in the world. And people always say, but there's 2 misconceptions with reading, right? One, I don't have time. So I listen to audiobooks in the car. I'm not listening to the radio, or I've heard everything that those rappers have got to say to me.
Do you know all the words?
Yeah. They're not telling me anything new. Yeah. All the good information is in the book. And the second misconception of reading is that it's something that you do to put yourself to sleep, which it can't be. It's about growing and developing. Yourself. And if I read 9 pages at 10 o'clock and fall asleep, I can't remember anything I've read. Can't. So we need to be doing it. There's a great book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's about identifying when you're at your best, your optimum. So when am I at my optimum? Because that's when we tend to go to the gym, but should also be when we're consuming things, and because we can draw it in. As the day goes on as an entrepreneur, things get heavy, people are ringing you, you get loads of emails and distractions, and it's hard to consume. You know, your bandwidth's low. So you need to consume it at your best possible time.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, man. That's great advice for people. It's all about starting your day right.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like from the get-go, the second you wake up, and whatever you promised yourself you're going to do the night before to keep that promise. Because if you can't fucking keep a promise to yourself, it's, you know, how you know, do you see what I mean? It's like me trying to give people advice where I've never invested into a property before.
Yeah.
And you can't give people advice doing that. You just can't, because it's all about the experience. Like going back to the property side of things, I've made every mistake under the sun personally. I used to buy property in my own name. You know, I'd believe anything that someone would tell me, because I'm quite easy to sell to, believe it or not. You know,
I'm a tough sale.
Yeah, and I'm quite trusting with people. Yeah, sometimes too trusting, to be honest, and it's probably one of my flaws. But yeah, going back to actually reading the books on Atomic Habits, what generally that's done for me is, you know, again, is making sure that consistency is there.
Yeah.
You know, and understanding why you're doing something.
Yeah. And
whether that habit is good or bad, mainly bad, understanding why why you're actually doing that, right?
Yeah. The best thing about Atomic Habits is ultimately the preparation. No decision is neutral, so you're either getting better or worse. But I think for entrepreneurs, one of the best pieces of advice I can give them is about decision fatigue. So it's about even the smallest decisions that you're going to have to make tomorrow, make them the night before. What am I going to wear? What's in my diary? Where do I need to be? Because it allows more thinking time, more creativity, and more volume in your morning to be successful. You don't want that to be taken up by small, meaningless tasks.
Well, let me jump in there. Well, that then creates an atomic habit for you, because as you start to do that, you're not even thinking that you're doing it. It just happens anyway.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it.
And it becomes automatic.
Well, it becomes a part of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what bringing it into becoming a lifestyle, as opposed to, I've got to go to the gym to work out. Yeah. You're doing it, it's a part of you.
Yeah. You ultimately have to, and the consistency blueprint's brilliant for this, because you're building a winning habit that then becomes a non-negotiable, and you're just stacking on top of it. So, right, every single morning I get to the gym for 6:30 and I'm going to do 30 minutes worth of cardio. That becomes automatic, then you don't have to think about it, it's part of your regime.
Circadian rhythm is used to it.
Yeah, you say, yeah, and then from there it's like, well, what else can I do on top of that? Well, now I'm going to listen to a book while I'm doing my cardio. So now I've habit stacked.
Now I'm going to do 30-minute weights.
Yeah. And then from there, it's like, I'm going to get to my desk for 8:30. I'm going to start working, but I'm going to read my emails. And then you just carry on compounding like that. And that's how you build a successful day. And ultimately, people think that routine is rigid and restricts you, but it actually sets you free.
Yeah, no, of course it does, yeah, because you're not overthinking. And if I say to myself, I'm going to train in the morning, and I don't do that for whatever reason, and I say, oh, do you know what? I won't do it this morning, I'll do it in the evening. What do you think I'm thinking about all day?
Not working out.
And do I go to the gym in the evening? No, you don't. And what do you then say to yourself? Oh, do you know what? It's Wednesday, I didn't go to the gym today. I've got this to do tomorrow. I'll start next Monday.
Yeah.
Who named these days? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, who actually named these days? Sunday could be Monday, right?
What I've found is that ideally, I would like to get up in the morning, go for a run before I get in the gym, because I like the oxygen and the fresh air. But if for whatever reason I get up and I'm sort of like negating on my non-negotiables, I have like a punishment run that I need to do in the gym. So what's
that, intervals?
Yeah, it's interval training. Yeah, my heart rate's going to be
JT does that. Have you seen that?
Through the roof. So
JT
it's like, well, I better get up and do the run and get the oxygen, because if I don't, then the punishment or the repercussion is that I've got to go and do the sprints, which I don't like quite as much.
Well, something else I want to touch on as well, mate. Like, obviously we spoke about earlier about your transition from football into doing what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But you was also with Joe Thompson doing that. And again, we have his walk on the 2nd of May.
Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate on that as well? Because I'm sure there'll be people watching this that might want to join in.
Yeah, no. Joe Thompson is one of my best friends. Unfortunately, he passed away on the 17th of April, 2025, after his third bout or fight with cancer. He first got cancer at the age of 23, whilst playing football. And Joe's played a huge part in mine and a lot of other people's lives. Now after his passing, we want to continue his legacy, continue his word, his mission, and we've set up the Joe Thompson Foundation, which ultimately is about, well-being. It can be mental well-being, it can be financial well-being, and we want to create an environment or a sanctuary where there is no judgment. You can do your recovery your way, which is what Joe would want to do. And the aim is that, with these events that we're doing that are going to be annual, we'll raise enough money to create a wellbeing centre in Joe's honour. It's going to be very holistic, very JT, but it's for everyone. And if you knew Joe, you'd know that he was super, super inclusive and got on with absolutely everyone. So the walk's starting at 11 a.m. on the 2nd of May from Rochdale Football Club. We're going to be walking 15 miles, which was Joe's number. And we're going to be finishing at Old Trafford, which is where myself and Joe started our football careers.
Nice, amazing, mate. Amazing, looking forward to doing that. Just to conclude it all, mate, we're so aligned, that's why I wanted to bring you in here today, with not only business, I think just as humans as well, and the fact that both of us are just really trying to make a difference with athletes, looking after them, is massive. And thanks a lot, mate, for coming on. And
appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And for enlightening the audience about yourself and everything that you got going on, mate. And you're a busy, busy man.
Yeah, it feels that way, but it's all good stuff. So we keep moving forward.
More to come.
Lots more to come. Thank you.